Back in October 2017, up near the Gifford Pinchot National Forest in southern Washington, I was 41 and hunting alone for the first time in 3 years. My daughter was home with her mother, 6 miles down a gravel logging road with bad cell reception and a propane heater that clicked all night. The weather had turned. Cold rain, fog rolling through the Douglas firs like something breathing. I was tracking what I thought was elk sign when I heard the scream. Not human, not cougar, something else. Then I saw them through my rifle scope. A mother and 2 young ones, maybe 4 feet tall, huddled near a boulder outcrop. And then I saw the bear. I got it all on my phone. 47 seconds of shaky footage I've never shown anyone except my brother, and he made me swear I'd delete it. I didn't. That was the easy part. What came after, that changed everything. I'd been hunting that ridge for close to 15 years, back when my father still came out with me and the roads were better maintained. The Forest Service had closed 2 of the access points after the 2015 mudslides, so most hunters stayed closer to the highway. I liked the quiet, liked being the only truck parked at the trailhead before dawn. That October morning, the fog was so thick I could barely see 20 yards. I was following a game trail along a ravine when I first smelled it. Wet dog, but stronger, mixed with something sour like old garbage left in the sun. I stopped, checked the wind. The smell didn't move. It just sat there in the cold air, heavy and wrong. I've smelled bear. I've smelled rotting elk. This was different. I kept walking. That was mistake number 1. The track showed up about a quarter mile further in. I knelt down, ran my hand over the mud. Barefoot. Human-shaped but stretched. 18 inches long, maybe more. 5 toes, deep heel impression. Too big for a man, too clear for a hoax. No boot tread, no sign of carving. Just pressed into the soft ground like something heavy had walked through during the night. I took 3 photos, checked the timestamp. 7:42 a.m. The rain was starting to pick up, blurring the edges. I stood there for a long time, looking into the trees. I didn't hear anything. No birds, no wind. Just the rain tapping on my jacket hood, and that smell still sitting in the air like it was waiting for me to leave. I didn't tell anyone that first day. Got home, kissed my daughter, microwaved leftover chili, and sat on the couch staring at the photos on my phone. My ex-wife asked if I got anything. I said no. She asked why I looked rattled. I said the road was worse than I thought. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went online, typed in large barefoot prints Washington, and got exactly what I expected. Forums full of people arguing, blurry photos, people calling each other liars. I scrolled for 2 hours, saw prints that looked like mine, saw people swearing they'd seen Bigfoot near Mount St. Helens, near the Columbia, near places I'd camped as a kid. I closed the laptop, didn't sleep much, kept hearing that silence in the trees, the way the birds had stopped singing. The next weekend, I went back. Told my ex I was scouting for elk season. She didn't care. My daughter asked if she could come. I said no. She was 9 then, smart enough to know I was lying about something. I brought better boots, a handheld GPS, and a small video camera I'd bought at a pawn shop for $60. The plan was simple. Find the tracks again, document them properly, maybe set up a trail cam. I wasn't expecting to see anything alive. I wasn't expecting to hear anything. But the woods were different that day. The fog had cleared, and the light came through the canopy in long shafts, lighting up the ferns and fallen logs. It was beautiful. It was the kind of morning that makes you forget why you were afraid. I found the spot where the tracks had been. The rain had washed most of them out, but I could still see the outline of one print under a low hemlock branch. I set up the camera on a fallen log, pointed it at the trail, and started walking a grid pattern through the underbrush. That's when I heard the knock. 3 times. Wood on wood. Deep and resonant, coming from somewhere upslope. I froze, counted to 30, heard it again. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. I've heard trees fall. I've heard branches crack in the wind. This was deliberate. This was communication. I pulled out my phone, started recording audio, and began moving toward the sound. My hands were shaking. My breath was too loud. I kept thinking, if this is real, if this is actually real, then everything I thought I knew about these woods is wrong. I didn't find what was making the sound. I walked for 20 minutes, following the slope, checking behind every cedar trunk, every moss-covered boulder. The knocking stopped. The forest went quiet again. And then I smelled it. That same sour wet dog stench, but fresher, closer. I turned in a slow circle, rifle in one hand, phone in the other. Saw nothing, heard nothing. But the smell was everywhere, clinging to my jacket, filling my mouth when I breathed. I backed down the hill, keeping my eyes on the tree line, and didn't stop until I reached the logging road. My truck was still there. No scratches, no prints in the mud around it. I sat in the cab for 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. I hadn't. That night, I called my brother. He lives in Olympia, works for the state, doesn't believe in anything he can't see on a spreadsheet. I told him about the tracks, about the knocking. He laughed, asked if I'd been drinking. I said no. He said it was probably a bear, probably nothing, probably my mind playing tricks after too many hours alone in the woods. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hang up and forget the whole thing. But I didn't. I asked him if he remembered the stories Dad used to tell about hunters in the Cascades seeing things they couldn't explain. He went quiet. Then he said, "Dad told a lot of stories. Doesn't make them true." We didn't talk for 3 weeks after that. I kept going back. Every Saturday, sometimes on Wednesdays if I could get off work early. I brought the video camera, a notebook, a tape measure. I started marking trees with orange tape, creating a rough map of where I'd heard sounds, where I'd found prints, where the smell was strongest. The tracks appeared sporadically, sometimes clear, sometimes just a toe impression in the moss. I found scat once, dark and fibrous, full of berries and what looked like bone fragments. I bagged it, labeled it, put it in my freezer under a bag of peas. My ex found it 2 months later and threw it out, asking what the hell was wrong with me. I didn't have an answer. By mid-November, I'd spent close to 60 hours in that section of forest and hadn't seen anything larger than a Roosevelt elk. I was starting to think my brother was right. Maybe it was bears. Maybe it was my own boots making prints I'd misremembered. Maybe the knocking was just trees settling, wind in the branches, my ears looking for patterns that weren't there. I was ready to pack it in, to delete the photos and the audio files and go back to normal hunting. And then, on a gray Sunday morning with fresh snow starting to fall, I saw them. A mother and 2 juveniles moving through a clear cut about 300 yards below me. I got my phone out, hit record, and watched the bear come out of the brush behind them. The bear was a young male, maybe 400 pounds, black coat matted with rain. It came in fast, low to the ground, no warning. The mother turned, put herself between the bear and the young ones. She was massive, 7 feet tall, broad shoulders, arms longer than any human's. The 2 juveniles scattered, one climbing a broken snag, the other crouching behind a stump. The bear hit her like a truck. She went down hard, rolled, came up, swinging. I heard the impact from 300 yards away. Flesh on flesh, a sound like a car door slamming. My phone was shaking in my hand. I zoomed in as much as I could. The footage is garbage, pixelated and jerky, but you can see her. You can see the bear. You can see what happened next. She grabbed the bear by the scruff, twisted, and threw it sideways into a pile of slash. The bear came back, claws out, teeth snapping, caught her across the shoulder. She screamed, high-pitched, almost human, full of rage and pain. The juveniles were screaming too, a sound I'd never heard before and hope I never hear again. The bear circled, looking for an opening. She was bleeding, favoring her left side, backing toward the young ones. And I realized, standing there with my phone and my rifle, that I was watching something that wasn't supposed to be seen, something the forest had kept hidden for a reason. And I realized I had a choice. I fired once into the air. The crack echoed across the clear cut. The bear stopped, head up, looking for the threat. I fired again, this time into the dirt 20 feet in front of it. The bear bolted, crashing back into the brush, gone in seconds. The mother stood there, breathing hard, blood running down her arm. She looked up the slope, looked right at me. I don't know if she could see me through the trees, but I felt it. Eye contact, recognition, something passing between us that I can't explain. Then she turned, gathered the young ones, and disappeared into the timber. I stood there for 5 minutes, maybe 10, watching the empty clear cut. Then I checked my phone. 47 seconds. I had 47 seconds of footage that could change everything. Or ruin everything. I wasn't sure which. I didn't go back for a week. Told myself I needed to think, needed to figure out what to do with the video. But the truth was I was scared. Not of the mother or the juveniles. Scared of what it meant. If Bigfoot was real, if I had proof, then what? I'd spent 40 years believing the world worked a certain way, that the wilderness had been mapped and cataloged and understood. And now I had 47 seconds that said otherwise. I watched the video every night, headphones on, frame by frame. You could see her face for maybe 2 seconds. Flat nose, heavy brow, eyes that caught the light wrong. You could see the juveniles, smaller, darker, clinging to each other behind the stump. You could see the bear, and you could see her throw it. No human could do that. No person in a suit could move that fast, hit that hard. I knew what I was looking at. I just didn't know what to do about it. My brother called on a Thursday, asked if I was still going out to the woods. I said no. He said good. Said he'd been reading about people who get obsessed, who spend years chasing shadows and lose their jobs, their families, their grip on reality. He said he didn't want that for me. I told him I was fine. He didn't believe me. That night, I copied the video onto a flash drive, put it in a lockbox in my closet, and deleted it from my phone. I told myself that was the end of it. I told myself I'd let it go. And then, 2 days later, I got a call from the Skamania County Sheriff's Office. A hiker had found tracks near the same logging road. Big tracks. They wanted to know if I'd seen anything unusual. I met the deputy at a coffee shop in Carson. His name was Mills, late 50s, the kind of guy who'd spent his whole career dealing with tourists and drunk drivers. He showed me photos on his phone, prints in the mud, same size and shape as the ones I'd found. He asked if I'd been hunting in that area. I said yes. He asked if I'd seen any wildlife, anything out of the ordinary. I said no. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded, said they got reports like this every few years. Said it was usually bears, sometimes elk, once in a while a hiker with big feet playing a prank. He didn't say Bigfoot. He didn't have to. I could see it in his eyes. He'd heard the stories too. He just didn't want to believe them. The deputy told me to call if I saw anything else. I said I would. He left. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at my reflection in the window. A couple at the next table was talking about hiking the Eagle Creek Trail, about how beautiful the gorge was this time of year. Normal conversation, normal lives. I wanted that. I wanted to forget the video, forget the prints, go back to hunting elk and fixing my daughter's bike and arguing with my ex about child support. But I couldn't, because I knew something now. I knew they were out there. I knew they were real. And I knew that Mother had looked at me, had understood that I'd helped her, and that changed something between us. I started going back at night. I don't know why. Maybe I thought they'd be more active after dark. Maybe I just wanted to see if I could find them again. I parked at the trailhead around 8, walked in with a headlamp and a thermos of coffee, and sat on a stump near the clear cut. The forest at night is a different place. Every sound is sharper. Every shadow moves. I heard owls. I heard mice in the underbrush. I heard the distant hum of logging trucks on the highway. And on the third night I heard the knocks again. 3 times, wood on wood, coming from the ridge above me. I turned off my headlamp, sat in the dark, waited. The The knocking came again, closer. Then again, maybe 50 yards away. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn on the light and shout and break the silence, but I didn't. I sat there, listening, and after a while, I heard something else. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate, moving through the trees just beyond my line of sight. I never saw what made the footsteps. The darkness was too complete, the canopy too thick, but I heard them circle me twice, and then move off downslope. I waited until the sound faded. Then I stood, turned on my headlamp, and walked back to the truck. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice. I drove home, windows down, radio off, trying to process what had just happened. I'd been evaluated, checked, maybe even accepted. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. The mother had sent one of the juveniles, or another member of the family, to see if I was a threat, and I'd passed some kind of test by staying still, by not panicking, by not pulling my rifle. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my porch until dawn, watching the tree line, waiting for the knocks to start again. They didn't. A week later, I found the basket. It was sitting on a flat rock near the trailhead, woven from cedar bark and vine maple, about the size of a dinner plate. Inside were huckleberries, still fresh, and 3 small river stones stacked in a cairn. I stood there staring at it for a long time. There was no note, no sign, nothing to indicate who'd left it or why. But I knew it was for me. I took a photo, then I took the basket and carried it back to my truck. My hands were shaking again, not from fear this time, from something else. Gratitude, maybe, or the weight of understanding that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I showed the basket to my brother. He came over that Saturday, looked at it on my kitchen table, and shook his head. Said it could have been left by anyone, a hiker, a kid, a Forest Service volunteer. I asked him about the stones, about the berries still being fresh. He didn't have an answer. He just said, "You need to stop. You need to let this go before it gets out of hand." I asked what he meant. He said, "People who go looking for Bigfoot don't come back the same. They lose perspective. They see things that aren't there." I told him I wasn't looking anymore. I told him they found me. He left without saying goodbye. That night I put the basket on my mantle. My daughter asked where it came from. I said I made it. She said I didn't know how to weave. I said I learned. She didn't believe me, but she let it go. Kids are good at that, accepting things adults can't. She touched one of the stones, turned it over in her hand and said, "It looked like the ones at the river where we used to fish." I said maybe it was. She put it back, carefully, like she understood it was important. Then she asked if I was okay. I said yes. She said I seemed different lately, quieter. I told her I was just tired. She hugged me and went to bed. I sat on the couch, staring at the basket, and realized I wasn't tired. I was changed. I'd been let into something old and secret, and I couldn't pretend I hadn't. Over the next 2 weeks, I found 3 more cairns, one near the clear-cut, one by a creek crossing, one on the hood of my truck. Each time, 3 stones stacked perfectly. No footprints, no sign of who'd left them. I started leaving things in return. Apples, jerky, a hunting knife I didn't need anymore. The gifts disappeared within a day or 2. No trace, no sign of how they were taken, just gone. And every few nights, I'd hear the knocks, 3 times, always 3, coming from different parts of the ridge. I stopped using my headlamp. I stopped carrying my rifle. I just walked into the woods and listened. Then my daughter went missing. It was a Tuesday in late November, cold and clear. She'd been playing in the yard after school, building a fort out of old pallets and tarps. My ex called me at work, voice cracking. Said she'd gone inside for 10 minutes, and when she came back out, our daughter was gone. No note, no sign of struggle, just an empty yard and the back gate open. I was there in 15 minutes. My ex was on the phone with 911. I checked the tree line, the road, The neighbor's property. Nothing. The dispatcher said a deputy was on the way. I didn't wait. I grabbed a flashlight and started walking the trails behind the house, calling her name, my voice getting hoarser with every shout. The search went on for 6 hours. Deputies, volunteers, a K-9 unit from Stevenson. They found her jacket near a creek a quarter mile from the house, but no other sign. The dog lost the scent at the water. The deputy, Mills, the same one who'd asked me about the prints, pulled me aside and asked if there was any reason she'd run away. I said no. He asked if there were problems at home. I said normal problems. Divorce stuff. Nothing that would make a 9-year-old disappear into the woods at dusk. He nodded, said they'd keep looking, said most missing kids turn up within 24 hours. I didn't believe him. I could see it in his face. He'd already started thinking worst-case scenario. Cougar, ravine, hypothermia. I didn't tell him what I was really thinking. I didn't tell him about the basket, the cairns, the knocks. I didn't tell him I thought Bigfoot might have taken her, or protected her, or led her somewhere I couldn't follow. Because how do you say that out loud? How do you tell a sheriff's deputy that you think a creature from campfire stories has your daughter and might be keeping her safe? You don't. You keep searching. You check every hollow tree, every cluster of ferns, every shadow that moves in your peripheral vision, and you pray. Around midnight, they called off the search until first light. My ex was inside with a victim advocate. I stayed outside, sitting on the porch steps, staring at the tree line. The woods were silent. No knocks, no footsteps. Nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the forest and beg them to bring her back. But I just sat there, numb, watching the stars come out above the ridge. And then, around 2 a.m, I heard it. 3 knocks, faint, distant, coming from the southeast. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight, and started walking. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't wake my ex. I just followed the sound, into the trees, into the dark, trusting something I couldn't see and didn't fully understand. I found her a mile in, sitting under a Douglas fir with a blanket I didn't recognize wrapped around her shoulders. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She was calm, almost serene, like she'd been on a field trip instead of lost in the woods for 6 hours. I ran to her, dropped to my knees, checked her for injuries. She was fine, cold, but fine. I asked her what happened. She said she followed a trail. I asked what trail. She pointed into the darkness and said, "The one they showed me." I asked who they were. She looked at me with her mother's eyes and said, "The big people. They said you'd come." I carried her back to the house. My ex met us at the tree line, sobbing, pulling our daughter into her arms. The deputies asked questions. Where was she? How did I find her? What happened? I said I followed a hunch, checked a game trail we used to hike. My daughter didn't contradict me. She just held on to her mother and stayed quiet. Mills looked at me like he knew I was lying, but he didn't. Push. He said we were lucky. Said it was a miracle she didn't get hypothermia. Said we should take her to the hospital just to be safe. We did. She checked out fine. No scratches, no bruises, no sign of trauma. The doctor said she'd probably just wandered off and got disoriented. My ex believed him. I didn't. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went into my daughter's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. I sat on the edge of her bed and asked her to tell me the truth. She said she already did. I asked her to tell me more. She sighed, rolled over, and said, "They're nice. They don't talk like us, but they're nice. The mom has a hurt on her shoulder. The little ones wanted to see me. They brought me to a cave and gave me berries. Then the mom said you were coming, and they left me under the tree." I asked how the mom said anything if they don't talk. She said, "I don't know. I just knew." I sat there for a long time, holding her hand. Then I asked if she was scared. She said no. She said she felt safe, safer than she'd felt in a long time. I didn't tell my ex. I didn't tell the deputies. I didn't tell my brother. I just went back to work, went through the motions, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But I kept finding cairns, on my porch, in my truck bed, once balanced on my mailbox, 3 stones, always 3, and my daughter started drawing pictures, tall figures with long arms, standing in forests, holding hands with smaller figures. She taped them to her bedroom wall. My ex asked what they were. She said, "My friends." My ex thought she meant imaginary friends. I knew better. I knew my daughter had been accepted into something I was only beginning to understand. And I knew the Bigfoot family was watching over her now, the same way I was. I went back to the woods alone, 3 days after we got her back. I needed to see them again, needed to say thank you, or sorry, or something that made sense of what had happened. I brought the basket filled with apples and smoked salmon and a handwritten note that just said, "Thank you for keeping her safe." I left it at the clear cut, in the same spot where I'd seen the bear attack. Then I sat down on a stump and waited. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the timber. The air smelled like rain and cedar. I didn't hear the knocks, I didn't hear footsteps, but after about an hour, I heard breathing, deep, slow, rhythmic, coming from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. Instinct maybe, or respect. I just sat there, hands on my knees, listening. The breathing continued for a few minutes, then stopped. I heard a rustle, like something moving through the underbrush. Then silence. I waited another 10 minutes before I turned around. The basket was gone. In its place was a single eagle feather, gray and white, stuck upright in the dirt. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. It was perfect. No damage, no wear. I put it in my jacket, pocket, and walked back to my truck. On the drive home, I cried. Not from fear or sadness, from relief, from understanding that I'd been forgiven for watching, for recording, for being human in a place that belonged to them. My daughter started talking about Bigfoot openly, at school, at home, to her friends. She'd say things like, "Bigfoot doesn't like loud noises," or "Bigfoot taught me how to stack rocks." Her teachers called my ex concerned. My ex called me angry. She said our daughter was becoming obsessed, that she needed therapy, that I needed to stop filling her head with nonsense. I said I hadn't told her anything. She didn't believe me. She threatened to revisit custody. I said fine. She backed down, but the damage was done. My daughter stopped talking about it around her mother, but she still talked to me. Late at night, she'd come into my room and ask questions. Do Bigfoot have houses? Do they get cold? Do they know we're sorry for cutting down the trees? I answered as best I could. I told her I thought they lived in caves, that they probably did get cold, that I hoped they knew we were sorry. One night, she asked me if I had a picture of them. I hesitated. She saw it in my face. She said, "You do, don't you?" I nodded. She asked if she could see it. I thought about it for a long time. Then I got the flash drive out of the lockbox, plugged it into my laptop, and played the video. She watched in silence. 47 seconds of shaky footage, the mother throwing the bear, the juveniles screaming, the blood on the mother's shoulder. When it ended, my daughter looked at me and said, "You saved her." I said, "I just scared the bear." She said, "No, you saved her, and now she's saving us." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just closed the laptop, put the flash drive away, and held her until she fell asleep. And I realized she was right. We were bound now, our family and theirs, tied together by something older than fear, stronger than disbelief. The following spring, I moved. Not far, just 20 miles south, closer to the gorge, farther from the logging roads. My ex got primary custody. My daughter visited on weekends. She was quieter now, more thoughtful. She'd spend hours outside, stacking stones, arranging sticks, leaving little offerings at the tree line. I never asked what she was doing. I just watched from the window and let her be. One Saturday, she came inside and said, "They're not here." I asked who. She said, "The big people. They didn't follow us." I said maybe they had their own territory, their own family to take care of. She nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She missed them. So did I. I still heard the knocks, though. Not every night, but often enough. 3 times, always 3, coming from different directions. Sometimes close, sometimes far. I'd step outside, listen, and whisper, "I hear you," into the dark. I don't know if they heard me back, but the knocks kept coming, and I kept finding cairns. On my new porch, by my mailbox, once on the roof of my truck. 3 stones, perfectly balanced. I started leaving gifts again. Fruit, nuts, dried meat. They'd disappear within a day. No footprints, no sign, just gone. And I'd feel that same sense of relief, of connection, of being seen by something the rest of the world refused to believe in. My brother called one last time, a year after I moved. He said he'd been thinking about what I told him, about the prints and the knocks and the basket. He said he still didn't believe in Bigfoot, but he believed I'd experienced something real. He asked if I was okay. I said I was better than okay. I said I'd been led into a secret, and it had changed me, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Just don't lose yourself in it." I promised I wouldn't. We haven't talked about it since. But every Christmas he sends me a card with a picture of a forest on it. No words, just the trees. I think he understands, in his own way. I think he knows I found something out there that most people spend their whole lives looking for and never see. Years later, I still have the video. It's on the flash drive in the lockbox, buried under old tax returns and my daughter's baby photos. I've thought about releasing it 1,000 times, posting it online, sending it to a researcher, letting the world see what I saw. But I never do, because I know what would happen. Hunters would flood the area. Scientists would set up cameras. The forest would fill with people looking for proof, looking for fame, looking for something to kill or capture or explain. And the Bigfoot family would disappear. Or worse, they'd be found. And I can't let that happen. I owe them too much. My daughter is 16 now. She doesn't talk about Bigfoot anymore, at least not out loud. But I see it in the way she moves through the world. Careful, respectful, aware of things most people miss. She volunteers with a wildlife rehab center. She wants to study ecology. She leaves cairns when we hike. And sometimes late at night, I hear her on the phone with friends, telling them stories about the time she got lost in the woods and something kept her safe. She never says what. She just says she knows it was real. That's enough. I still live near the forest. I still hear the knocks. 3 times. Always 3. Drifting through the trees at 3 a.m. when the world is silent and still. I step outside, barefoot on the cold deck, and I listen. And I whisper into the dark. I'm still here. I don't know if they answer. But the knocks keep coming. And I know deep in my bones that the Bigfoot family is still out there, still watching, still remembering the day a hunter with a rifle chose not to look away. I'll carry that with me until I die. The video, the basket, the feather, the stones, all of it locked away, hidden, protected. Because some things aren't meant to be proven. Some things are meant to be kept